moderating this debate, so I'm just going to do a quick introduction of what we're talking about and who you guys are going to hear from for the next 45 minutes or so. So, quick summary, you guys all know, but the debate is on should Congress pass climate change legislation in 2010. So to begin, on the pro, we have Teryn Norris, who's a junior majoring in public policy. He spent 2 years as a project director researching climate policy with the Breakthrough Institute and is currently leading a student group here at Stanford called Americans for Energy Leadership.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Thanks to the host for having us. I think this is a really important topic, obviously, to be debating right now. And yeah, I mean, this is a very extraordinary time to be talking about this issue because, you know, we just had Copenhagen, which there were many expectations for, and that came and went. It looks like cap-and-trade legislation may be on the verge of collapse right now in the U.S. Senate. And really a lot of questions about where we're going from here in terms of climate policy. So those are really important questions, and I'm glad we can talk about them here. I actually wanted to just take a step back first and just kind of acknowledge, you know, how extraordinary it really is in terms of the amount of challenges that our generation faces right now and in this century. And this ranges from all kinds of issues from, you know, the progress of technology to broader sustainability and environmental crises, to a whole range of challenges in terms of the rise of Asia and the global distribution of power. And then, of course, in terms of the climate crisis, which is really, and many of these challenges present existential threats to human civilization. And it's really, you know, it's extraordinary that we have to deal with these challenges, and especially our generation in particular. We're inheriting, yeah, just this huge number of problems that we're going to have to figure out. But it's really an amazing opportunity for us to really recreate the entire world. And that's really what we have to do in terms of climate change, energy, and sustainability. But right now we're here to talk about the future of energy and climate policy in the United States. And I think, you know, to put this in a broader context really and just kind of talk common sense, you know, I think, I believe, and a growing number of Americans believe, that this is most fundamentally an issue of American leadership. That really, you know, in terms of this broader context of where the United States is right now, we're really at a crossroads in terms of what is our position in the world in this century. We just went through one of the most defining and massive economic crises of our time, really almost became a second Great Depression. You know, Asia is rising rapidly, and we face, you know, great challenges in terms of where we headed next. And you know, I think in terms of you know, especially in terms of what is our leadership role in the world, we can see that there's really this enormous power shift that is taking place, and that is toward the Pacific. And you know, there's so many examples of this happening. But for example, when Obama was in China a few months ago, you know, the way his trip was described was really as a spender going to talk to his banker, and that's really where we're at in terms of our relationship. And you know, there's really no better example of this overall power shift taking place than in clean energy. And right now, Asian countries are moving rapidly to try to dominate this sector. And this is a really important issue, and this is not just an issue of, you know, addressing environmental issues. It's not just about climate change. It's really about historic economic opportunity, and really, as Barack Obama has said many times, the country that really leads the global clean energy industry will in many ways lead the global economy in this century. You know, the global energy and transportation industry is a $7 trillion a year industry. You know, last week actually there was a great three-part piece on the Mercury Sun, and there was a quote from someone at the Clean Tech Group, and he said, "When it comes to clean tech, we have the largest market opportunity in the history of the planet." And there are good reasons for that, because really what we have to do is we not only have to make sure all of our future energy development comes from clean tech, we have to replace our entire existing global energy infrastructure with clean energy. And that's going to require a massive economic transition and lots of profits to be made and an economic potential. Now, but as I was saying, what's happening is, of course, that Asia is moving rapidly to dominate this sector. And in November, I co-authored a paper that was released with the Breakthrough Institute and the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation called Rising Tiger, Sleeping Giant. And what we found is that, and this is common knowledge now, that Asia has already surpassed the United States in the production of nearly all clean energy technologies across the board. That they're set to out-invest the United States by 3 to 1 in this sector over the next 5 years, on the scale of about $500 billion total versus about $150 billion by the US government, and we're talking about in terms of public investments. That they're seeking to really establish a first mover advantage in this industry, establish innovation clusters that they'll be able to maintain for decades into the future. You know, Secretary Chu described it about a month ago that China right now is investing around $9 billion every single month in clean energy, and that's in terms of the government. And the United States position is rapidly declining. We used to manufacture 40% of the world's solar cells. Now we're manufacturing about 7%, and that's happening across the board in almost all of these sectors. So this is really, on one hand, we face, existential crises in terms of, this global shared problem, which is addressing climate change. On the other hand, there's this, this defining economic challenge, which is really, what country is going to lead this industry in the next few decades. And so what I think is that really the United States has a critical role to play in terms of, and our leadership role in the world and making this transition to clean tech and really harnessing what I think is the greatest strength we can offer, which is our innovative potential. And I think, we have tapped that potential over and over, and that's, and here at Stanford, I mean, this is a great example. The United States really led the global information technology revolution, and not just the United States as a whole, but also really this region that we're in right now, and this campus that we're sitting in right now. So I think if we can leverage that innovative capacity, we're going to be able to do wonders for the world. Now, in terms of what that means for climate policy, what we have is we have China, India, the rest of the developing world, developing, and is deploying on one hand a lot of clean energy, but also huge amounts of coal. And so, emissions are expected to skyrocket into the next few decades. And really, it's common sense. I mean, if clean energy was cheap, we'd be using it. And when I say clean energy cheap, I mean the total system cost, including grid, storage technology, etc. And so really, what we got to do to get the world off of coal is we've got to make clean energy cheap. And it's really, I mean, there are a lot of complexities to that, but that's in many ways what it comes down to. And healthy, peaceful global competition in the global clean energy race is one of the best ways to do that, because to the extent that we can get our governments and our industries really competing over market share, it's going to drive down the price of these technologies much quicker than any other strategy we can implement. So I believe, and I think a growing number of people around the world believe, that this clean energy race, this race to see who can compete in this industry the most, is a very important competition for our own economies, but also for the world as a whole, and in terms of addressing climate change. So I believe what the United States should do right now is really, we need a national strategy to make clean energy cheap, that we can use here in this country and for every single American, but also for the world as a whole. And in terms of where the climate goals are right now, I think that there are important frameworks, but I don't think, and I think a lot of experts are going to see this, is we don't really have an effective technology policy in any of these plans. And this came out last summer when 34 Nobel laureates wrote a letter to President Obama decrying the lack of investment in the American Clean Energy and Security Act, and saying that, it's pathetic how much this would invest in R&D. The American Clean Energy and Security Act would only invest about $1.5 billion a year in clean energy R&D, and these 34 Nobel laureates said we need at least $15 billion a year in that sector. Now, Secretary Chu has come out to say this over the last few months. Senator Bingaman, Bill Gates 2 weeks ago said the same thing. I looked at this piece of legislation, way too small investments in clean tech. And so I think we're achieving a consensus here from a growing, Google said the same thing. So we're seeing a growing number of high-tech firms, also military leaders. Last year, Operation Free, a lot of military veterans came together to say, we really need to be investing more in clean tech. And so I think we're seeing a convergence around this. So the first component of this national strategy to make clean energy cheap is really, clean energy R&D investments on the scale of at least $15 to $30 billion, or $30 billion a year, and that's really on par with what we have in other priorities. National Institutes of Health gets $30 billion a year in clean energy R&D. Military R&D budget is about $80 billion a year. Energy is at least as high as a priority for this country right now as is health. So I think that's a pretty simple case to make, and I think we're headed in that direction. But we need to make sure that the climate policies on the table include that investment. Second component is direct investment, demonstration deployment on the scale of $30 billion a year to make sure that we're actually taking those technologies to the market as quickly as possible, because deployment is also a critical part of the innovation process in terms of achieving learning curves and driving down the price. And finally, last but not least, is really an education strategy to make sure we have the human capital we need to actually go out, invent more technologies, innovate on the ones we have, and really have the entrepreneurs that go out and take them to the market. So that's why right now, with Americans for Energy Leadership, a growing number of students from around the country are working to make sure this gets appropriated by Congress this year, but to invest millions of dollars in universities and colleges around the country to develop this new generation of energy leaders. And if you're interested in that, I'd love to talk to you more afterwards. But yeah, so overall, this is really a question of American leadership. Our nation is really at a crossroads in terms of our position in the world. The future of the world is at stake. And really what's demanded now is a rapid mobilization of our generation to really achieve nothing less than a global energy revolution. So thanks so much, and I look forward to the rest of the comments.
Okay, thank you. That went a little bit over, which is great, but we're just going to